Hey now, this is Tiffany. I am with Boss on the Budget. If you don't know me, I help new and small nonprofits get up and running, but I also teach on grant writing. So I go live every week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to share new grant opportunities. And every week has a theme. So this week's theme is youth programming. So what happens is I actually have a mailing list, and on this mailing list, I send weekly grant opportunities to the list. I send it on Fridays. If you want to get on that list, I'm about to drop it in the comments right now. If you want to get on the list, go ahead and sign up for that at that website, and you'll be added. And so what I do the following week is actually talk through the grant opportunities. And I'm also here just to answer any questions you have about grants. So before I get started in sharing the grant opportunities, I do want to share just some basic information because I like to give tips and tools for people who are especially new to grant writing. And if you're here joining me for the first time, let me know who you are, or if you're returning, let me know who you are. So a lot of people get confused about grants because they don't realize that there are different types of grants, and not every grant is one and the same, just like every funder is different. So there are what's called program grants or project grants, and then there are called general operating grants or unrestricted grants, and then there are other types. But the two main types you're going to see typically is program grants and then general operating grants. Now, most grants are project or program grants. And don't get caught up in the language because some people are like, well, I don't know if I consider what I do a project or a program, but essentially that just means that the grant is supposed to be used for whatever services you're doing directly with your client or directly with your target population. So those are things that are not to cover administration, things like rent or utilities for the overall organization, things like paying for your accountant and paying for your overall insurance. That's overhead, that's administrative costs. Grants only really cover what what you need to do in those expenses when you're doing a direct program or providing a service directly to somebody. Now, a general operating grant is different in that you can use the money for just about anything. I'm not going to say everything, but just about anything. And you have a lot more freedom to use that money. Okay, so that's the difference between program grants typically and then general operating grants. Those operating grants are unrestricted and they give you the freedom to use it to pay for your rent or to use it to pay for things to build up your infrastructure as an organization. So it's important to know the differences because when you're applying, there may be restrictions for how you use the money. You got to be real careful about how you use that money if you're awarded because you got to report back and you got to keep track of that anyway for your purposes for the IRS. Alrighty, so let's get started. So the first grant, and I'm going to drop it in the comments and also post it on the page. If you know anybody who runs a youth program, please let them know about this video. Please tag them or share this video with them. Share it on Facebook. Sorry, I'm tired. Do whatever you got to do. But this first grant is from the Kinder Morgan Foundation. So most of these grants that I find for y'all, I have never heard of in life. So if you've heard of them, please let me know because there's so many different foundations out there and their names are so interesting. But so Kinder Morgan apparently is a private company and this is their foundation. And their focus is on the academic and artistic interests of kids who are in grades K through 12. So again, the theme for this week is youth programming, but just stay tuned if you don't necessarily do youth programming because a lot of these grants do youth programming and other things. So I'm talking about 3 different grants today, and this is just the first one. But this one in particular with Kinder Morgan is really only just for youth programming, okay? So the foundation supports programs that, and this is their words, that benefit traditionally underserved youth. That includes minorities and girls with a focus on STEM programs. So if you're doing STEM programming in your whatever area, or if you have a part of your program or a part of your curriculum that focuses on STEM, you might want to take a look at this grant and check it out. You got to have clearly defined objectives. That's with almost every grant. They're going to want to see your goals and objectives. But they did note that you have to have strong community ties. And so one way you can show that is show past history of partnerships. Have you partnered with another community organization in the past to do some of your work? Or is some of your work carried out by other community members or other community organizations? So funders in particular really like community partnerships. They really like to see that you can play well with other people. They like to see that you leverage your community ties. And it's not just other nonprofits. It could be businesses. It could be your local lawmakers. It could be your local university. That's still considered the overall community. So if you are working with the community, it's important to lift that up. Okay. So Kinder Morgan in particular, y'all, they only provide program support. So that's why I explained in the beginning the difference between program grants and general operating grants, because it's key. You gotta check for that when you're looking for your applications or when you're looking at the grants. Their grants are typically in between $5,000 and $20,000, and it's not just for nonprofits. Public and private schools are also eligible. So check that out. The thing about Kinder Morgan is this: they only provide grants to organizations that are within 30 miles of where they operate. So they have a bunch of different areas where they operate around the country. They actually kind of spread kind of like evenly throughout the country. So I see Birmingham here, I see Phoenix, I see Concord and Carson, California, I see North Dakota, I see Tampa, Florida, I see Alpharetta, Georgia, I see Port Newark, New Jersey, Chicago, Shreveport, Houston, so Norfolk, Virginia. So honestly, 30 miles is pretty big. So if you're within that area, you might want to check that out, okay? Because that covers a big section of the country, all right? So their focus, again, is on academic programs, which includes tutoring and also includes arts education, all right? Their next deadline, so I think they review their applications quarterly. Their next deadline, their next deadline is February 1st. And so they will notify you within 30 to 60 days. And they require they only require a final or interim report when you're reapplying. If you're not reapplying, they don't require a report. Okay, so y'all need to go ahead and check out Kinder Morgan. They seem like kind of easy to get into. So again, when you're looking at corporate grants, and again, corporate grants are those that are associated with corporations, businesses, then it's important to see where they operate. It's important to try to get in good with the employees, to get in good with the leadership there. Maybe they have a partnership manager or a community outreach manager. Try to engage them in other things besides just asking them for money. Try to get them out to volunteer or to participate in an event with your organization. So if you're trying to get in front of a foundation and you're trying to figure out how to do that, one good way is through their employees. All right, so this next one, y'all, just stay with me, okay? So this next one that I'm going to talk about actually does not have a website. But did you know that the Hooters restaurant has an endowment fund? So again, these are programs for youth. And yes, Hooters has a community endowment fund. So they provide support to nonprofits, again, in the communities that are served by their company. So if you have a Hooters in your area, then it's likely that they will give you money if you're working in that area. They do emphasize programs in Atlanta, Georgia. I didn't look to check, but it could be very well that they're headquartered in Atlanta, or maybe they got started in Atlanta, and that's why they say that. But they do focus on Atlanta, but they do fund in other areas, so just keep that in mind. So their areas of interest are children and youth, education, health, and social services. So pretty broad, but usually those people who do like things around human needs, basic human needs. So again, children and youth, education, health, and social services. So they don't necessarily have this information on their website. So I'm just going to make sure I talk slowly so y'all get this. So what they want you to do is submit a written request. And in that written request, they want you to send a description of the organization. They want you to send the purpose for which the funds are being requested. They want you to put the amount of the request, and then they want you to send a copy of the 501c3 letter. That's what they're looking for. So they're looking for a description of the organization, the purpose for which the funds are being requested, the amount of the request, and a copy of your 501c3 letter. All right. And you have to send this, and they didn't really specify, they did not specify at all who the contact is or where to send the information. The only contact information I could find was an email. And so the email is hooterspr@hooters.com. So again, the email is hooterspr@hooters.com. Now, if you're looking for information for a funder in particular and they don't have a website and they don't talk about the kind of funding that they give, one way to find out is their 990 form. So every foundation is required to release their tax form. And in their tax forms, they give information about how to apply for funding they have available. So I didn't check to see if Hooters had their 990 on the web, but you can check. So it's called the Hooters Community Endowment Fund. You can go ahead and check out the 990 and see who they fund and see how often they fund and how much. I would just Google 990 Finder and it'll come up and you can just search by name, the Hooters Community Endowment Fund. All right. Okay, this is the last grant application for the day, or grant opportunity for the day. And I'm going to post it here. All right. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but this is the Simplot company. And in the email, if you're on my email list and you're listening, I had a typo in the email, sorry. And up top, I said the priorities is animal welfare, but it's various. It's not just animal welfare, it's various industries. And I don't even think they fund animal welfare, okay? So the J.R. Simplot company, they have a community involvement program. So they support nonprofits that are located in communities with their company facilities. They do have an emphasis for organizations in Idaho. So just remember, they do fund nonprofits in other areas where they're located, but they do have a focus on Idaho. And in this particular search, I was looking for funders that fund in Houston, Texas for a particular reason. Someone on the list asked me to look for youth funding, and they asked me, and I just checked them out and saw that they were in Houston. So I said, well, let me look and make sure that these people fund things in Houston. So if you're in that area, I particularly picked all three of these funding opportunities because funding was available for people in Houston. All right. So the company supports organizations whose primary mission fits within 5 different areas. And I'm going to go over each one. Okay. So the first area is the arts. So organizations that encourage creative, cultural endeavors through visual and performing arts. That's one. Number 2 is education. So the focus is on public and private higher education, and then certain elementary and secondary projects and activities. So mostly higher education. I'm assuming that's college and universities, not necessarily vocation, but ask them if you have questions. The next area is youth. So they focus on programs that specifically benefit young people, especially those targeted at prevention rather than treatment or correction of youth-related problems. So I'm going to tell you this. I don't know what a youth-related problem is. That is so broad that I would just ask, if you do anything with youth, just ask, would you be eligible? There's no harm in asking. That doesn't mean they're going to answer you. That doesn't mean they're going to be nice and provide you any information, but I would ask anyway. The fourth area is community. So the focus is on healthcare and human services. So again, extremely broad. And then on industry, the focus is on nonprofit industry organizations directly connected to J.R. Simplot Company's area of business, which includes agriculture, horticulture, and related sciences. So basically what that means is if you have a nonprofit related to agriculture, horticulture, and those kind of sciences, that they will also look at you because that's what their company focus is. So the theme and the lesson for today really is funders, they fund things that are related to the things that they like, the things that they work in, the things that they're associated with. So they're associated with and they're connected to the communities where they're located, and they associate with nonprofits that are connected to their employees. So always, always remember when you're talking about corporations and their foundations that are associated with them, you got to look at the corporation and how that corporation acts and what their focus is, because that will give you clues to the kinds of things they're interested in. But I also would still check who they fund, how they fund, look at their patterns. Is there a particular type of nonprofit that they typically fund? Do they normally fund in a certain way? Or do they fund during a certain time of the year? Is it better to reach out to them at a certain time of year? These are all things you should check out with your funders so that you have like a better understanding of what they need from you when you apply. All right. So applications for JR Simplot are accepted on a rolling basis, and you can apply in that link that I put for you guys. Anthony says, well, my nonprofit organization is dealing with youth and young adults. My organization is doing community outreach. So I would check just to see, first to see if you're in an area where they have a company facility. So that's number one. And then number two, they said they're interested in prevention. My assumption is, like, if you do things around preventing early pregnancy, if you do things around preventing delinquency or preventing high school dropouts and things like that, I would frame it that way. So you may not necessarily talk about it in that way in your program materials, but essentially because of the work you do, you're preventing poor outcomes. So you can frame it that way since they're so focused on prevention. So that's another thing that I always like to tell people. Look at how they talk, look at the words that they use. If they're talking about prevention on their website, then that means that that should be your frame when you apply for a grant with them. And you essentially are doing prevention because you're trying to prevent poor outcomes. You're not necessarily getting to youth. I'm just making an assumption, Anthony. Stop me if I'm wrong. But you're not necessarily just serving youth after something has happened. A lot of times the work that we do with youth is prevention. It is to prevent them from going down the wrong path. So it could be essentially a really good fit for you, but you just got to check and see. All right. Any other questions? Please let me know. If you need help trying to figure out how to write and what to put in a grant proposal, I have a grant writing workbook for you guys. So if you need help kind of fleshing that out, you also can check out the grant writing workbook, and I will link that after this video is over so you can have a link to it. But I go live every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't know how long I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it for a little bit just to see, just testing out the YouTube Live experience to see if it works for me. Also, if you are a new nonprofit and you need help just with your nonprofit development, check me out on Instagram at BossOnAB and also on Facebook at BossOnAB, because I've been going live just about every day talking about nonprofit startup, which includes funding, which includes talking about grants. And probably in about March, I would say, I'm going to focus on grants for the whole month just to talk about that. Crystal said, first time catching you live. Thanks for coming on and distracting me from Georgia runoff. Look, I'm not looking at the TV at all. So my strategy for the presidential election was to not look at the TV at all, and just, it was what it was when I woke up. And that's what I'm going to do with this. I'm just going to say, Georgia, do your thing. And I'll just wake up and see, because I don't need the aggravation and I don't need the stress. Too much other stuff going on. So thank y'all for catching me live. I will be back next Tuesday. I hope you guys stay safe and be blessed. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.